I'm reading from the book of Psalms, the 139th Psalm, beginning with the first verse. O Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out, my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. You hem me in, behind and before. You have laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like day, for darkness is as light to you. You created me in my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know them full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depth of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of the sand. When I am awake, I am still with you. Now, I'll admit I picked this scripture because of the events tomorrow. Because tomorrow days are going to become like night. An eclipse. And the psalmist tells us we are never apart from God. No matter where we are, no matter where we go, no matter what we're doing, God is with us. God sees us. But we don't always see God. Yeah. I know God always hears me when I pray, but I'm not sure I always hear God when God speaks to me. I know God always sees me, but I know I don't always see God. Now tomorrow, as I told the children, the moon is going to pass between the earth and the sun. And for a few minutes, we're not going to be able to see the sun. Now, this is not something to be afraid of. This is a natural phenomenon. It's not a sign. I know it's not a sign because signs from God don't necessarily come on timetables. And scientists have been able to tell us for years that this eclipse is going to happen tomorrow and where we should be if we want to see what they call totality, which will be about where we are. So, they can map the movements of the sun and the moon and the earth and say, here's when the eclipse is going to happen, because they do math that is far beyond my understanding, but they can predict it. You can't predict signs from God. This is natural. And it's not something to be afraid of, but it is something we can learn from. Now, a solar eclipse is not the only time something passes between the sun and the earth. Lots of things pass between the sun and the earth. There are lots of reasons we don't always see God's light. We don't always see sunlight. The earth turns, and when the side of the earth we're on is facing away from the sun, it's nighttime. And we don't see the sun. No, we expect that to happen. And we expect it to happen every day. And so far it has. But just like the earth turns, and sometimes the earth turns away from the sun, sometimes we turn, and we turn away from God. Doesn't mean God's not there. It doesn't mean God doesn't see us. It means we've turned away and we're not looking for Him. Other times, what we experience more, or just almost as much, is cloud cover. You know, whether the sky is completely overcast, or it's raining, or there's just partly cloudy, but occasionally the clouds pass between our view and the sun. Momentary. You know, sometimes, like rain clouds, sadness grips us. Again, God's still there. The sun is still there. First time I ever flew on an airplane, it was overcast. I remember I get in the plane and we start flying up, and then we hit the clouds and everything goes completely white. It's like you're on the inside of a ping pong ball. And then you went up a little bit farther, just a few minutes, and suddenly it was bright and the sky was blue and a layer of white was beneath you. I couldn't see the sun when I got on the airplane. And when we landed and I looked up, I couldn't see the sun because it was overcast there too. But the sun was still shining. And just like the weather, sometimes the circumstances of our lives keep us from seeing the sun. But even when it's overcast, there's still light during the day. When the sunlight hits the clouds kind of scatter it, but it still gets through. And even when our spiritual journey is cloudy, those clouds are not enough to keep God's light from shining through. May not be as bright, but it's still there. And we would know instantly if it wasn't. And then we have major events. Like tomorrow, we have an eclipse. These don't happen regularly or very close to each other, but they happen predictably. And when the moon crosses between the earth and the sun, it's going to get darker until we cannot see the sunlight anymore. And then it's going to start to get lighter. Now, what is it in our lives that can eclipse the light of God, that can block God's light from leading us, from guiding us? There are, just like with the sunlight, there are lots of things. If they get big enough, like the moon, they can block God's light from us. Fear. Fear can block God's light. When we're afraid, we hide. Often when we're afraid, we hide from God. Well, I should change that. We try to hide. Because like the psalmist says, we're not really hiding from God. God is still there. God sees through the darkness as if it were light. But sometimes the things we do to try to hide don't keep God from seeing us, but they keep us from seeing God. You ever play hide and seek with a toddler? They think they're hiding. And you know exactly where they are. Sometimes it's the giggling. Sometimes it's their feet sticking out from underneath the curtain. Or from behind the couch. They can't see you. You can see them. When we hide from God, when we attempt to hide from God, we end up hiding God from ourselves, not the other way around. Other things that hide God from us. Greed. We get so driven by the quest for the shiny object. Ooh, shiny things, that we don't see what's reflecting and causing that object to be shiny in the first place. Our eyes are drawn not to the things of God, but to the things of our own desires. Sometimes God's light is hidden from us because we have chosen to look elsewhere. Yes, I know all of my friends who are teachers are, if they're having school tomorrow, they're teaching about the eclipse. And if they're not having school tomorrow, they probably already taught about the eclipse. It's a great opportunity for children to learn about science. But it's also an opportunity for me to remind us all of the things that can eclipse God's light in our lives. Now we tell our children not to be afraid of the eclipse. The sun's still there, it's just hidden. And give it a few minutes and it will pass. The same thing can be true when something eclipses God's light from us. we can ask God to help us make it through the darkness until it passes. The difference, however, is that we can choose to allow it to stay. We can choose to walk in the shadow of our fear, or of our greed, or of our self-righteousness. But we are called to be children of the light. We are called to walk in the light, not to remain in shadow and darkness. So when something comes between you and God's light, ask God to remove it. Ask God to move it along in its orbit until it is no longer between you and